Who am I? Why am I here on this earth? You know, what is my soul purpose and path?
What if you could have a blueprint for your life? Well, you can.
That's very much what human design is.
And human design life coach Phi Dang is sharing how.
When we are born, we are our whole and most authentic selves, but inevitably we become conditioned and influenced by the world around us. Human design is like, no, just be you. Embrace you.
Don't miss this mind-blowing conversation as we discuss the power of your unique energetic makeup. I mean, seriously, 15 minutes and you have me pegged. Unlocking your human potential.
Everything becomes juicy, magnetic, sexy. Everything falls in. It's almost effortless.
And the true fulfillment that comes with living into your purpose.
So you can kind of see how everything's divinely orchestrated to help you live your best life. And I'm like, oh, this is what true consciousness and awareness is, isn't it?
On an all-new Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers. Welcome to Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers, a podcast dedicated to those seeking a more fulfilled and purposeful life through thought-provoking conversation, spiritual exploration, and authentic connections. The intentional movement has begun, and if you found yourself here, you are a part of it. Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers starts now. Hi, Phi. Welcome to Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers. I am really excited to see where this conversation goes because we just had, a 15-minute chat off camera before we even started. And I'm just like, okay, we have to push record because I can talk to you forever. You are brilliant. I love everything you're doing. The whole concept of human design is just, well, now it's blowing my mind more than anything. And the fact that I was just editing today a podcast about astrology and now I get to talk to you, I'm just like, I feel like I'm just geeking out. I'm like a kid in a candy store right now. So welcome. I am so excited to jump into some great stuff with you.
Thank you so much for having me, Courtney. I'm really excited to be here. And I love that we were diving deeply and quickly into all things human design. So I think, I really believe in divine timing. So I love that you've been kind of going into astrology and now human design. So yeah, very excited for our conversation.
Yes. I mean, I'm just going to say this now. If you want to learn anything about human design, I mean, seriously, 15 minutes and you have me pegged. You did my chart. You read for me. And it's just like, if you want to know who you are, this is obviously the way to go. It is so cool. How do you do this?
Oh my goodness. I think human design is up and coming. It's kind of been around for a while, but me personally, I guess my spiritual journey and human design journey really started 2 years ago during the pandemic because I wasn't always, I'm currently a life coach and an author, but I actually used to work in the corporate world. And so when human design first came into my life, it didn't make a lot of sense to me. And it's funny, it came back round and it was almost like the information was intuitively downloaded within me. And suddenly when I read people's charts and their energy, everything really made sense to me. And I think it overcomes that stereotype that people are either born intuitive or psychic. And I've really learned from my own journey and speaking with a lot of people that it's not the case. We can always tap into our intuition and our psychic abilities. And some of us go on to do it with other people, but at its core, we always know ourselves best and we can always read for ourselves.
It's so how do we use human design to help read for ourselves so that we can better understand who we are? Because I mean, like I said, in that 15 minutes, so much of what has happened in my 41 years of life at this point makes so much sense to me, mind blown to the fact that I don't even know what an hour with you is like. How do you look at that chart? Is it the intuition? Is it the downloads? Or is it a math and astrology where you're looking at the planets and you're looking at where you were born and all the different transits and things that are happening?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think astrology is a part of human design because it very much combines all these tools such as Vedic astrology, the Chinese iQing book of truth, Kabbalah, the chakra system. And it's very much synthesizing all of this information to be a self-empowerment and personal growth tool. And I like to think of it as the love child between astrology and Myers-Briggs, personality test. So very much human design, it is a chart that you can read. And I guess what I bring into that is not only do I read it, but I bring an intuitive flavor and psych to it. But people go to school to learn human design. So it is very much a system as well. And The way that I like to think about human design is, have you ever wished for a guide or a manual? That's very much what human design is. It's an energetic blueprint. You can even think about it as your soul's contract with Earth in this lifetime. And very much when we look at your human design, the way that I personally like to explain it is, it's like you're the main character of a movie, a TV show, or a book. And so all of these elements we can see, for example, I hope you don't mind if I share, like briefly we were speaking about finding your voice. So if you're someone that's, here to really help people find clarity and depth to their voice and your voice, you're not going to be born as someone that's like confident off the bat, very knows who themselves are. Like you're going to go through a whole journey to kind of get there. And that's what we were kind of briefly speaking about. And I think that when we are born, we are our whole and most authentic selves, but inevitably we become conditioned and influenced by the world around us. So we forget who we really are, and we try to become this certain ideal or person in order to be safe, to be loved and successful. So human design comes into the picture as this experiment and this permission slip to be who you are. And there's over 2 million configurations. So you might have one aspect of your human design that's like somebody else, but it makes you completely different to another. And so it's really about learning to live authentically and embracing who you are and really asking those hard-hitting questions. Who am I? Why am I here on this earth? What is my soul purpose and path? So, I absolutely love it. I coach people for 6 months, 12 months at a time on it. There's just such a well and depth of information that you can go into.
Well, do you think, I know we all come in with a soul contract. So can your human design blueprint really shed light on that for you?
Yes. So when we look at your human design, we can see like your 4 main energies. So I might give a bit of context. So your human design believes in your conscious personality. And that's very much what we know of ourselves, what astrology tells us. And the unique element of human design is we see your soul blueprint as well. And human design believes this is created 3 months before you enter your body. And so there's indicators within your chart, like it's very pointed. Like I can see if someone's having a karmic lifetime or they've kind of wiped the slate clean. You can see like karmic relationships. And with all of the planets in astrology, they also apply in human design. So for example, if we look at your Venus, we can very much hone in on your values, particularly in relationships, what you value. So there's just so much information in there. And I like to say human design is just an experiment. It's not meant to be on a pedestal, but it gives you indicators. And a lot of the time, if you've been doing personal growth, development work, likely the things that I reflect and say in a session, deeply within yourself. But as a human, it's also nice to have that validation, like, hey, I'm on the right track. Like somebody else sees this in me as well.
Well, I think that's huge because especially, just for me, I've always wanted to take so much control over my life or know how it's going to end, or I wanted that map, that is part of my personality. So if you are someone that feels uncertain about how your life is going, you can have everything laid out and you might think where you want to go or what you want to do or live life by a certain set of rules. But your human design chart is probably going to show you a different path that might not be the society standard or what you're controlling or planning. And I even love how you said, as children, we come in, which I've talked about a ton on this show. We come in so connected and knowing who we are. And then we tend to forget about that as we grow up. And I'm wondering, this is, I guess, a second part of the question, even can we change that so our children don't forget who they are when they come in? But going back to the first part, here I am going off on 2 different tangents because I'm just so fascinated with everything you're doing is, can we use this really as a better blueprint for our life as opposed to following what society says we should be doing?
Absolutely. And I work with a lot of parents as well. And this is such a beautiful thing because I imagine if this tool was around when I was growing up, maybe the way that I've turned out would be different. And I think, everything is meant to happen for a reason, but I think especially in the industry now, the word alignment is very much a buzzword. And for a lot of people, they're like, what does alignment actually mean? What does happiness actually mean? And so human design actually gives you those tools, what does alignment mean for you specifically? So for example, Courtney and myself, we are what we call generators, manifesting generators. They are 70% of the world. And our blueprint for alignment, we know we're in alignment when we feel satisfied. And what does satisfaction mean? Well, it's almost putting yourself first. It's doing things that bring you joy. Like we are very much, our blueprint is the more happier we are, the more turned on we are by life. Everything becomes juicy, magnetic, sexy. Everything falls in. It's almost effortless. It's almost so easy. We don't have to work so hard. But when we're not ourselves, we feel frustrated. Frustration is our energetic wiring that tells us either that what we're doing is incorrect for us or the way we're going about is incorrect. It can bring up feelings of resentment. It can bring up feelings of anger. And so it's almost like those pointed tools to give you an idea of when you are in flow and when you're out of flow. And I guess with children, it's like learning, for example, when I look at your chart, Courtney, you are someone that is very much a sacral being. You are actually built to be very spontaneous. In fact, the longer it takes for you to make a decision, the more incorrect it becomes because your mind has hijacked the decision-making process. You are someone that is such a sacral being, a gut being, like very much feeling those turn-ons. You can almost hear your gut speaking to you. It almost grunts at you. It's like, like you feel things energetically. You either feel drawn towards something or expanded, or either you feel heavy and lost. And it's very much 110% yes or it's a no. It can't be planned for. And whereas for me, I was designed to be an emotional authority. So all my life, I rejected my emotions. I didn't want to feel things. But when I learned my human design and I was like, oh, like that's why I've always been labeled like sensitive or overwhelmed by emotions, because I was actually built to be an emotional person. I'm really meant to feel the highest of highs and the lowest of lows. So when you start to get these clues about who you're meant to be and why you experience certain things, and I mentioned to you, Courtney, that we both share what we call the channel of struggle in human design. So when I see this in my own chart, in other people's chart, it's saying, well, you're going to go through some struggles in life, but it's that energy of turning, pain into power, grief into gold. But when we lose a sense of why things are happening to us and we lose that sense of agency and we feel like, as all humans do, we go into that victim mode. That's when we're in that shadow expression of our human design. And that's what I really love. Like human design talks about your highest expression, your best self, as well as our shadow. And then we can almost identify where do we sit in that spectrum and where maybe there's some work to be done. Where do I embrace more of my natural strengths as well? So instead of like trying to be somebody else, human design is like, no, just be you. Embrace you.
I mean, that's the best thing we all can do is just be us. But I even love when you're talking about this, I'm thinking about it. If I just knew my husband's, human design, or my daughter's, or my son's, or my mom's, or my dad's, or my sister, like we could understand so many of us on such a different level if we all showed up that way. Because even when you were talking about it, that like, that gut instinct, like I'm either 100%, 110 right away, or I'm a no, that has been me always. Like I could always remember that. And even, back when I was dating, I would remember like, my mom and sister giving me dating advice, like just give this person a chance. And I'm just like, no, I don't want to. And it's like, but you're doing it wrong and you're always breaking up and you're unhappy and all this stuff. It's like, well, it makes sense that I was so adamant. Like, and then if I would give someone a chance, it still wasn't going to work out. It just prolonged something that wasn't going to work out. Like, you are so right. It's just like instant. So like, if we could understand someone else's human design, we could give them grace more to show up as they are and understand them and vice versa.
Well, yeah, it's essentially a mirror, isn't it? The more that we can deeply love and accept ourselves, the more that we can deeply love and accept other people and have compassion for them. Mm-hmm. And that's actually very much what I see in your soul energies. Your soul is very much on this journey of empowering itself and learning to love yourself and learning to have compassion and really understanding yourself. I kind of, for everybody listening, we were kind of briefly chatting and I was saying Courtney's soul purpose is what we call to be a vessel of love, to almost be this instrument of the God, of divine, of universe, and really, helping people to find their paths, to embrace themselves and to really, allow and accept who they are. And, human design also incorporates the chakra system. So we know the traditional one is 7. In human design, it actually splits into 9. And that's because we split the solar plexus into your G center, which is like your identity center as well. And so I think that's really interesting because, for example, when I look at your chart, Courtney, one of your most activated centers is your identity center, as well as your spleen, which is the intuition center. So what that tells me, especially about you, is you're someone that deeply knows themselves. And if you ever feel lost, like you don't know who you are, that's almost like you feel like, oh, I don't know what's going on. Like the ground beneath me has kind of come apart. And especially when we have those big transitions in life. And as I mentioned to you, like in human design, we have open centers and defined centers. So when we look at your open centers, we're understanding where there's conditioning and influencing in your life. So for example, Courtney, if I was to look at your chart, in terms of your open centers, you've got you're quite open up here. So you've got your head chakra, your ajna, your third eye, as well as your throat. So what that really tells me is you're someone that can easily channel, get information, see different perspectives. You're almost like a chameleon with voices. You're very good at picking up subtle nuances of communication. Like communication isn't just talking. You can read people's like body language or their tone, or even like the words that they use it gives you a lot of information about them. And so very much, that is like the superpowers, and the challenges can be like really checking in with yourself. Is this my original thought, or is this somebody else's thought? Where did I get the idea by the age of 45 this should have happened? I'm getting lost in perspectives. Like if I'm around really negative people, I almost seem to absorb that. And as I was saying, kind of like growing up, maybe it's like finding that you don't have a voice, and then really learning to channel and be empowered by that. And I think one of the two biggest things in your chart is your heart. So that oscillating self-confidence, either feeling like the queen of the world or feeling like, oh, I'm doubting myself, I'm having imposter syndrome, or, you're someone that just feels very deeply, Courtney. It's almost like you're not only feeling your own emotions, the people around you, as well as the collective. And so growing up, maybe you either embraced your emotions, or maybe you were someone that was like, wow, why am I always overwhelmed by my emotions? But like, here I am telling you, like, this is how you're built to be. It makes you very empathetic. You can almost like really have empathy for people's thoughts and feelings and how they are. So very deep diving in the moment here.
I mean, yes. But even going into that, a lot of times, like you said, we'll pass around these things, these words in spirituality and wellness, things like alignment or things like that. And what you just said right now kind of was almost describing to me, you're an empath. It's a word that gets thrown around all the time. You feel other people's emotions. You're empathetic towards everyone. And I've always kind of used that as, I've realized it now more. Yes, I do take on other people's emotions. Someone's mood can flip my mood in a second. And you do have to check in sometimes with yourself. Is this mine, or is it someone else's? But I find that like, even with you and your story, you are named the positivity queen. I mean, there is such a thing about being around someone and feeling that energy and showing up in that way. And so if you are around negative people a lot, which is kind of almost like the human bias to go into that negative realm, but like if you're around that negativity around a lot, like you said, I will take that on, and it makes me not feel good, and I don't feel like I'm on top of the world like you said I should be. But on the other end, if you're around someone positive, if you're around someone that has that spiritual energy, if you're around someone with that heart and those things, it lights you up. It gives you honestly, it's later. I mean, we're on two different sides of the world. It's in the evening here, and I know it's morning time for you. And I'm like dragging going into this until we get on the phone, and I'm just like, whoop, I'm supercharged. Let's go. You can take that on so much, and you do have such positivity about you. I mean, why is that we can take on that emotions, or do we all not do it? Is that just something I'm so accustomed to that I feel that everyone does it?
It's actually everyone's built for different things in a lifetime. And the weird thing that's really coming through to me is I think as people that are probably more spiritually inclined or interpersonal development, we wish that everybody knew this, and we wish that everybody would be on the same path as us. And what I've simply have to come to understand is not everyone is on that journey. And all we can do is, especially in, the dark and heavy times right now, is start in our own backyard and help on working ourselves and becoming more self-aware about the way that we move in through this world, and knowing that we all make a difference, and that positivity can impact those people. You can be a light in the dark for so many people, and everybody's got different configurations. And in human design, we can see, like, for example, when I look at your chart, Courtney, you've got maybe one only natural emotional energy in your chart versus, say, somebody like myself who might have 5 or 6. So that kind of tells me that you're someone that really oscillates with your emotions. So for me, because I'm a defined emotional authority, like when I feel sad, I know what to do. These are like 5 things I can do. Whereas with your chart specifically, it's like when you feel an emotion, you can't deal with it the same way. So maybe when you're sad, yoga helps one day, but the next time you try, yoga won't work. You might have to go boxing. And so that's really telling me like you're more fluid with your emotions and the way that you kind of process and deal with it. And so when we dive deeper into somebody's chart, we can see whether, first of all, they have an open or defined center. Then we can see their natural energies or plot lines or storylines. So for example, the natural emotional energy that you have in your chart is family and friendship. So you're very much somebody I see in a family or community as a glue, and you feel that pressure. You want to keep the peace. You want to, make sure everybody's happy. You want to make sure everybody's winning. And that can sometimes come at the sacrifice of your own self and your own desires and needs. Would you say that's true? This is me just reading you on the fly. So
yes, very, very, very true. Yeah. Yes, it is. And there's such an aspect of sacrifice. And I always chalked it up to, oh, I'm a woman and I'm a mom. That's kind of the narrative in my mind that goes out there is as women, we sacrifice for others. That's been the narrative, and that needs to shift and change. Or, you're a mom, you need to put your children first. I know that there's a big trend towards like filling your own cup and taking care of yourself more now, but I find that absolutely almost impossible to put myself first. I have done it in certain areas of my life over the last year and a half. But, even in my normal day to day, I still struggle with that. And I find like, I find that very common, I feel like, among women. So you're saying that's more of a human design trait that someone like me would deal with.
Yeah, and I think everyone is so unique in their soul blueprint. And I think knowing your chart, like your soul themes are very much being like self-love and compassion, and overarching the umbrella theme is love. And isn't it so funny that you easily give love to so many other people, your family, your clients, and then you almost forget like the source of love is me. So if I don't fill up my own well and give from, I kind of don't just believe from giving from a full cup. I actually believe in giving from an overflowing cup, because to me, the bare minimum is to be full. So all of the excess that kind of comes out is important. And I think, especially for your chart, you feel things more deeply because your soul personality is what we call the 5 profile line in human design. It's the heretic, and the heretic almost attracts projections onto them. So I feel like your life, you probably have this thing like, do people really see me for me, Courtney? Or do they want me to be the perfect wife, the perfect mother, the perfect daughter, the perfect sister, the perfect, mentor? So there's all these projections that you almost feel, and you have to almost distance yourself. And that's why it's really important for you to know yourself. So you can kind of see how human design pulls all of these threads together to create the ultimate picture of you.
Yeah, I'm feeling very much like I'm trying to temper my words, because you are hitting on some very, very big parts of who I am. And that's like, am I willing to go there? Am I willing to share that part of me? When this is a podcast all about sharing your voice and showing up authentically, there's things that I still struggle with. I mean, definitely showing up as the perfect this or the perfect that, or showing up as these expectations of who I'm supposed to be or who I should be or who people want me to be has been a lot of my life. And I am personally, and that is one of the reasons why this podcast has happened, is one of the reasons I'm still struggling trying to, show up as me, as that authentic me. And do I know who that person is? Yeah, I do. But like, do I give myself permission to show up that way? And I feel like a lot of us don't. We want to be portrayed as a certain thing, but then that also leads us to like, what do they think about me? What is this person going to say when I do that? And so that's where that projection comes in. That's where everything that you're talking about comes in. And that's where love actually comes in for me a lot. I've struggled with the whole concept of love for a long time, only wanting to be loved and not feeling like I was being loved, whether different areas in my life, so I understand exactly what you're saying. And even when you're talking about, having to go through those struggles in life, live through that so that I can experience them and help others through it. I mean, it makes so much sense. And I think that anyone listening to this podcast probably has quite a few of these similarities in them. So how do we move past that? How do we embrace these things so that we can really fully come out as ourselves and feel confident in that? Because obviously it is a struggle.
And isn't it so interesting that I told you that your soul purpose is all about love? And so you can kind of see your life as orchestrated to have all of these different experiences and relationships to teach you deeper about love. And I think love is one of those things that people can kind of box into. It's either romantic or it's family, but love is like an ever-present thing. It's like everything. And I was saying, like, if you distilled every single religion down, the core message will be about love. And that's what really brings us together. And so I think that you're very much on that journey to help other people. And it's like, I think we're always so used to giving love as we give it to other people, that for a lot of women particularly, it's learning to receive that love, learning to like give it to ourselves and not from the outside world. You know, I definitely struggled when I was younger with self-love and getting my sense of self-worth from men and dating and things like that.
Yeah.
So I think in terms of like overcoming, it's understanding, well, if I'm meant to master this theme in this lifetime, I have to go through the challenges and the struggles. And it very much ties into, you know, I have a book and it's called The Great Unlearning. And it was very much from this concept that I think in personal development, we always feel like we're behind. There's so much more to learn. There's so much more stuff I need to do. But I really found it's all about unlearning and unbecoming who you thought you were meant to be. And it's like, oh, like people told me happiness looks like this, but in actual reality, it's not like that. Happiness means like this to me. So it's really all about taking back our power and not giving it out to the other people in the sense of what they tell us will make us happy, and really figuring that out for ourselves. So for me, it's a lot about unlearning, like, oh, this doesn't make me happy. So if this doesn't make me happy, why am I doing it? Who says I have to do it? And then I start to question myself and I'm like, oh, this is what true consciousness and awareness is, isn't it?
Oh my goodness. It gets so complicated when we wake up and open our eyes to what, you know, what real awareness is or what real consciousness is. Like it makes life, in one way, it makes life easier because we can look at things from that perspective. But in another way, I feel like it gets more complicated because it's like so much easier sometimes just to play the little game accordingly, to live in the matrix, to not like take all these decisions and understanding of ourselves. And, you know, and I've talked about this before, when you like use your intuition in your life, that means you're taking responsibility for your life and your choices. And it's the same kind of thing with being aware of what is really happening with you and what's going on. I mean, I feel a greater responsibility now just talking from you in a good way of what my soul purpose is. You know, it gives me a little bit of power, and I actually think this specifically, and anyone that is curious about human design should think about that. This conversation is giving me more power and gusto and more of like this foundation that, okay, I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing. Well, I use the word supposed to in quotes because I don't think you should say you should do this or you're supposed to do that, but I am living my purpose. This makes sense. Just continue to go, double down. Like this is right. Even in those times, like you said, that imposter syndrome or this little voice comes in or someone doesn't like this. It's okay. Take that deep breath. I am going through my path intuitively guided on the way I am. And I think that is the gift you've already given me just in what you've shared with me about my chart.
Yeah. And I think it's a huge testament to the bravery that goes in personal development. And I think about why a lot of people don't want to do personal development, because it is really shocking and scary to confront ourselves and really see ourselves in the glory that we are, and as well as in like, we're at the depths of the bottom, but we're not really necessarily being our best selves. And I think that's why tools like human design, like when I do readings for people, I often do have people that can be shocked. They may cry. There's all sorts of reactions, and all emotions are welcome, because it's almost like the bravery that it took for me to be open to hearing like who supposedly who I am and why I am the way that I am. I think that is really important in that narrative of doing the work, is being in our power and knowing that we are so brave and we're not going to get it right all the time. You know, I think that's a testament to your conscious personality in human design. We call it like the martyr, and it's very much about, you know, all your life, it's like pain and pleasure is intertwined. You've got the beautiful excitement, joy, and ecstasy, but you've also got trauma, failure, and disappointment. It's almost like your soul put its hand up. And it's like, I don't want to leave any stone unturned. Give it to me all. I put my hand up. Let me experience it all. For better or for worse, like, this is what I want.
Yeah, I wonder sometimes, because when we start talking about soul contracts and things like that, I'm just like, why? And it's not that I've had like some huge trauma in my life, but you know, there's a part of you that's kind of like, why in the hell would I sign up for this? And I think about that more like on a bigger scale, because being aware that we do come down with a plan, you know, and we sign up, we volunteer to come to human school and have these human existence. Yet there's so many atrocities that happen in this world that it's kind of like, those people did sign up for this, I guess. Like, that's where my mind gets a little bit like why would anyone ever sign up to deal with some of the horrors that we see? Because like you said, it is good, bad, ugly, it's all of it. And I know that we need to experience the extent of everything. That's what Source wants to experience. But, you know, there's some really nasty things that happen, like we were talking about.
Yeah. And I think that's where karma comes into it. You know, personally speaking, I think people think karma is dealt in this lifetime. And I'm like, no, karma is dealt across lifetimes. The universe isn't like open 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. The universe is watching you 24/7. And that's why I say, you know, maybe at times we feel wronged. It's like, it's not up to me to enact revenge or seek compensation. For me, it's like, the universe will address it, whether in this lifetime, in future lifetimes, or whatever. And I think it's kind of knowing that. And I think it's about like, well, why do we, you know, we're going very deep here, but why do we choose to be human? We want to experience. It's almost like that our creator saying like, do you want to go on this earth? And hey, like, it might be challenging, but you're going to experience this and really learn this. And your soul goes, you know what? Yeah, I would like to do it. I do want to experience this. And you know, for example, bringing your, you know, I'm just giving everybody like an analogy to kind of understand, like in your chart, I also see a lot of like perfectionism and overcoming that. But again, that makes a lot of sense when your overarching soul purpose is to learn to love. So what better way to teach someone to love themselves by overcoming perfectionism? So you can kind of see how everything's divinely orchestrated to help you live your best life. And I think it's understanding that I see the universe as being very benevolent. Like, it wants us to succeed. It wants us to be happy. And I think just kind of taking that stance, it's almost like, you know, like I guess people say I'm very positive, and that's because the way that I approach people, I never think anyone's out to get me. I assume the best in somebody until they prove otherwise. You know, I'm not naive. Like, once I have evidence or facts that maybe they don't have my best interests at heart, then of course that's up to me to navigate my boundaries and, you know, how I'm feeling within. But I think it's like that energy of like, yeah, like I'm going to assume the best in people, and that's how I choose to live my life, and I'm happier for it.
Well, doesn't that make you a magnet for more positivity?
Yeah, I think I guess that's when the universe kind of speaks, like everything's like an energetic match, right? And that's why when we go through really big spurts of development, why the people in our lives change, because we either outgrow them, maybe they're not coming with us on this journey. So I always kind of, you know, I think there comes a time, I think all humans need to stew a little bit. And I've definitely done that, where I'm like, oh, this really sucks. And then I always like, okay, I'm like, it's time to get out of this. And it doesn't feel good to feel out of control and I have no say in agency. But if I take responsibility for what I can control, whether it's like my perspective or what my actions are to take, then I'm like, okay, I'm back in control. Like, I'm back in the driver's seat and I have the power.
So you're saying like, so when you're making changes in your life and things are going different, you know, people aren't always going to go on that journey with you, like you just said. So is there kind of like a human design plan for you and the people that are in your life? You know, I actually talked about this in the astrology episode that we did, where we talked about, you know, you have your personal chart, you have your personal astrological path, but, you know, there's like a mass consciousness, there's a bigger path, there's, you know, a bigger thing at scale. You know, you can look at your family astrology, you can look at like it on a worldwide stage. Is that the same thing with human design? Can you see like,
yes, very
the
much
players
so
in your life and how they come in and out?
Not necessarily, yes, because in a sense, like, it's similar to astrology where you can do like synastry charts where you can actually overlay your chart with like a partner, a colleague, like your child, so you can see what you're meant to learn. But I think human design is really interesting because we attract opposites in human design. So for example, each like life theme has a partner life theme. And so if you carry one of those energies and you meet someone that has the other half, that's where you have instant chemistry or clash. So you can very much see why certain people are drawn into your life. And so, for example, I said to you that you have a very strong identity center. So you will attract people that they don't necessarily know themselves, or they feel lost, or they feel like they're in a transition in their life. They're very much drawn to you because they can feel that you've done the work. You're very confident in who you are. You are very intuitive as well. Your spleen is like all but one energy is activated there. So that tells me you're somebody that really does confront their fears in this lifetime. You really had to work on survival mode. Do I have enough money? Do I have a place to live? And so again, because you've been through that journey, you'll attract people that have a lot of fears in their life. And when they come to you, they almost feel like, like I feel safe. Like, she knows what she's doing. Does that kind of make sense and resonate with kind of like the people that come into your world? So you can definitely see that in your human design as well.
Yeah. I mean, and that can almost be a blessing and a curse, because you want to be there. You want to be able to pick people up. You want to be that rock for them and help them see themselves. But then, like you said, I'm really open to the energies of other people and emotions. And it can be like exhausting. Sometimes it's like, I just don't want to deal with other people's stuff. Let me just deal with me. And it is hard sometimes to be that glue or that person. So I could see, yes, definitely there's positives and negatives, I think, to every side of, and that's, I think, where we also come into that, how astrology works. There's the good side and the bad. What was the astrologist told me? She's like, there's the wretchedness of every sign and the lovable side of every sign. There's that duality of everything. And it almost sounds like there's that duality also with our human design chart.
Yeah, I think duality is very much a theme that's coming at play. And I think there's so many things we can be happy for, but there's also so many things that maybe we're disheartened or we feel disappointed in. It's about like being able to hold both of the energies and not kind of thinking in black and white terms. It's very much holding space for both, and almost this element of like, the interplay between surrender and like free will and what's destiny and plan, right? There's just so many factors in it.
Well, surrender, I've talked about that so much on this podcast because it's something I struggle with, which is really funny to me that I would struggle with surrender given the whole what I know now about my human design. But how do we surrender so that we can really show up as ourselves?
I think surrender is almost about understanding like the way that when I struggle to surrender, I almost try on this perspective that everything in this moment is perfect. For whatever reason, I don't humanly understand, but the divine has said, this is perfect for you. And especially as somebody like one of my main life energies in human design is struggle. So many times I look back in my life and I'm like, that was the worst thing that ever happened to me, but it was also the best thing in my life later on. And two instances very much come to mind. So when I had just turned 20 years old, my dad died, and that was the worst thing that ever happened to me. And the scary thing is I don't think I would be here before you today if my dad didn't die when I was 20. I think that really did set me on the path and this higher consciousness and awareness and life experiences to be the life coach and author that I am today. And, it was only 2 years ago that I was complaining I wasn't getting promoted to being like a group strategy manager. I was on track, to be the youngest group strategy manager in my company. I'd made them, $5-10 million. And I was like, what? I didn't get the promotion. I didn't get the pay rise, but that was the very thing that led me to be doing this full time. So I'm like, all of these things, I was like, they were horrible. Were actually the best things. And so every time I try not to make an assumption about the present moment, because I'm like, I can't see the full picture, nor do I want to. And I think that's something like, if I was the universe, I'd be really stressed out because every single thing has a flow and effect that affects maybe somebody on the other side of the world. It's like that butterfly effect. So I'm like, I don't want to control everything. Let me surrender. You do it. You know everything. And I'm just going to like try and accept this moment as it is.
Oh my goodness. That is one of the best analogies I could ever think of. If you think about it, think about that movie, who was it? Was it Jim Carrey and Morgan Freeman? I think it was, and he was God, and one of them wanted to be God, and then he got to go be God, and then like was getting like constant emails and like chats with like everyone's prayers and what they were asking for, and this overwhelm. How exhausting it has to be being, the divine, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it, because it is so true what you're saying. almost always the worst things that happen to us turn out to be the best. Now, do I think you losing your dad at 20 is a great thing? No, but it did line you up to do this, what you're doing now, and to live your purpose. And so many times when we look back at anything, quote unquote, negative in our life, you can give it a positive spin to a certain degree because it sets you up for what's to come. And we don't always connect those dots. I mean, when COVID happened, I lost my job. And, you know, I wouldn't be here now. I wouldn't be living in Tennessee now. I wouldn't have moved from California and changed my life. Like, there's so many things that had to happen from that experience that seemed horrible in the moment, you know? And I think if we could all kind of remember that like all these different orchestrations are at play and how it affects so many other people. And that's where I think I struggle a lot too, is because owning yourself and having that self-love and putting yourself first does affect other people. And so it always works out in a way, but it's a hard thing to stomach sometimes, to like understand that like what you're doing can change the lives of so many others.
And I think so many of us grow up having that people pleasing and giving a lot. And I think like as I've kind of gone on my spiritual path and realized like I can't do, people have to keep their side of the street clean and I have to keep my side of the street clean. And it's almost like giving somebody else full liberation and agency, that I trust that they're an adult. And if they're upset at me, that they'll say something to me because they know that I'm open to those conversations. And so it's not like assuming that they'll feel upset by this. And if they do feel wronged, it's like having that conversation with me. And I think it is, you know, almost like trying on different perspectives like clothes. And something that really comes to mind is like when I was in my corporate career, I had a very tough boss. And, you know, like I was like, she made my life hell. I was very miserable and upset. And it's been years now, but one of the perspectives that really changed my life was like, you know, maybe seeing it as like we had a soul contract and she loved me so much that she had to do whatever she needed to do to wake me up in this lifetime. And if that was pain and putting me in positions where I lost my power and I didn't have boundaries and I didn't speak up for myself, yes, that was a very painful lesson to learn. But seeing it as like, wow, maybe someone loved me so much that they were willing to be that bad character and villain for me in this lifetime. And that doesn't mean I'm on speaking terms with my old boss, but I've definitely forgiven her and seeing like, wow, she played a really big role in where I am today. And that was a real like big girl pants moment for me. Like, whoa, like maybe she really did love me enough to be the villain in my lifetime. And I think that's the thing, like in everybody's life, you might be the villain. You might be a side character. You might be the main character, but we're all helping each other in this interconnected way. And knowing that, you know, especially like, online, when I talk about, for example, living a freedom lifestyle and making money, I know that can really trigger people because I have also been triggered. And that's where the individual comes in, because I could either be jealous watching somebody live their best life, whereas I was deciding, do you know what? If she can do it or he can do it, I can also do it. And let me try figure this out. So I think that's where we come to our own free will and agency and our personalities.
Well, I love what you were saying is that this boss loved you so much that she got to be the villain in your story. I actually saw someone online today wearing a shirt that said main character energy. And I was just like, I absolutely love that. I just watched one of my favorite movies last night and it's the holiday and they talk about it. Isn't it the best? And they talk about Kate Winslet, you know, she needs to be the main character in her story. We all are the main character in our story. And if we can change our perspective to see, you know, whatever is hard in our life as, you know, that challenge. And if it's a hard person, that they loved you so much. I love that perspective. They loved you so much to play that person in your life that, you know, really caused a lot of friction. I mean, it just comes at everything, I guess, from my overall makeup, what you've said is that point of love. I mean, that's everything.
Yeah. And I think it is that answer and very much the main voice that I see in your human design chart is like, what would love do? And that answer changes. You know, how you answer that at 20 years old will be very different to how you answer that at 50 years old. And myself, as I get older, I realize like enabling bad behaviors, that might be loving in the moment that I prevent like pain, but overall in the long-term growth of that person, I'm actually preventing their path. I'm actually holding back their growth by not being honest in this moment. And so I think it is really like deeper exploration. And I think love is so corny in like the spiritual world, but it really is the answer to everything when we can really go into the depths of what love means in a moment.
I actually really like going into the depths of that, because it's not just, shocker with my human design, but, but you know, like the whole concept of love isn't, you know, only about loving a spouse or loving a partner or loving your children. It covers so much ground. And I've had this talk, you know, even with things that are going on in the world, if we come at things with more love, and even how you were saying, everything distilled down to love. I know so much conflict happens throughout the world, throughout different cultures, because we don't understand one another rather than extending love to one another. Or, you know, we have different religious beliefs or whatever that is. But when you distill down all the messaging and all the different perceptions, everything at the core, from everything I understand and I've studied, it comes from the exact same place. It comes from love. It comes from acceptance. It comes from faith, believing in something bigger than you. And it just gets so distorted because we all are seeing things through our own perception. So I love how like we are actually having this conversation where, you know, love is such a big thing for me. And you talk about perception so much. I mean, let's bring these together. And I know that we can't all have a uniform perception. You know, we're all perceiving our life through our own lens, but we can choose a more positive perception. We can choose to see things with love, and that will just change the trajectory. It's not that I'm sitting here going, hey, we're going to like create world peace, but like if more people do that, you know, it just will be contagious.
Absolutely. And I think the biggest thing about love is compassion. And it's like we can only meet ourselves so deeply in love that we can meet others for ourselves. So like, for example, if somebody really annoys me in that moment, can I relate to being that annoying person to somebody else? And that's when I can have compassion for myself. So then I can extend grace and love to that other person because I can put myself in their shoes. So often when we have an emotional charge or trigger, it's because we haven't met ourselves deeply to where we see it so reactively in somebody else that we are going, oh my gosh, like I see myself in this person. Because I think, you know, I always say to my clients and myself, like being in relationship with somebody is like almost having your own business. Like you meet different parts of yourselves when you're single versus in a relationship, when you work for yourself versus when you work for somebody else. We're always opening up and unlayering ourselves to all these different experiences and meeting different parts of ourselves in circumstances that we've never had before. And, you know, with self-love, you can never like hate yourself into loving yourself. It doesn't work like that. The only way is genuinely loving yourself and having compassion.
That is so true. I've talked to other people about that. You know, you don't go from hate to love overnight. You got to like yourself in the middle a little bit. You know, you're not going to go from hating this part of your whole body to just loving, you know, certain parts of yourself. If you don't like, you have to work on it. You have to almost build up to it. And so self-love, love in general is almost like a muscle that we have to work so that we can extend it to other people, so that we can understand what it means, so that we can have that compassion for ourselves, so that we can give grace to others. But it's a practice. It's not necessarily just something. It might come naturally when we're children that you instantly just love your parents type of thing. But, you know, as you start to go about the world and you experience more people and more experiences, you have to constantly work it.
And I think it's very much a lifelong practice. I don't think the work is ever done, you know, and I think it makes me really excited to see new generations. You know, when I watch Instagram or TikTok and I see these little girls and boys writing affirmations on the mirror and saying affirmations, and, you know, there's a whole new generation that's coming and they're actually being taught how to love themselves. Whereas, you know, maybe someone like yourself or myself, like I wasn't taught that you're meant to love yourself. I was always taught to love other people. Like, do this for your family, do that. Yeah. And so I think that there's a lot of beauty in the darkness that's coming through as well. And I think, you know, especially when times are really hard, I'm like, don't forget like all of these, like, you know, beautiful babies that are being born and all the celebrations that are also happening. We're very much in this duality state in the world right now.
Do you think that not being taught to love yourself was a cultural thing from you? Because, I mean, we grew up on opposite sides of the world. You have your parents were immigrants. I mean, you're from Vietnam.
Yes.
Do you think that was that? Or do you think it's because, but then you moved into like, I would argue Australia is more a Western culture, you know, very similar to the States.
Yes.
Like, do you feel like it was a taught thing or do you think it was a cultural thing?
Oh, I don't know. I think there's a lot of barriers for regardless of where you grow up, about like social media and what we see on TV and popularity. And I think in terms of like Asian culture, we're definitely taught to, it's like all about the family. Like we say you have a face and it's not your individual face. Like what you do represents your family. So I think there's like a lot of pressure there, like knowing like how you reflect your family. So I think that was definitely a factor. But I think regardless, like I don't know many cultures that kind of teach you like, hey, you should like really like love yourself and be really kind and like forgive yourself. I don't think that's very much a commonplace thing. And I think that's one of the benefits of the pandemic that I found is like the consciousness around our mental health has been higher than ever. And it's really allowed people like ourselves and light workers to come out and do this work because it's more open. Like, I imagine being a life coach 20 years ago is not as socially acceptable as it is now. And I think now it's really like embraced. Like, like when I talk to clients about dating, it's like, if you've gone to therapy, like that's a huge green flag. This is like a tick, tick, tick. Like this is sexy to me. Whereas maybe like 15 years ago, people were like, no, that's not a good sign. Like they're crazy. So it's just showing how these changes are happening on a conscious level for everybody, right?
Right. Oh, I mean, yeah, exactly. My husband and I, when we met, we were older. We had both been through many failed relationships, and we had both gone through a lot of therapy to deal with our own shit on our own side. And so when we came together, we're like, we actually know how to communicate because we both went through years of therapy. So I was like, this is a blessing. This is wonderful. And I love that we can talk about it more. And you're right. I think we are changing the narrative for future generations. I mean, in the way we parent, the way kids are coming into the world, like I try and do it different for my children as well, because, it's just, there's so much more hope when you could see them growing with that self-love as opposed to taking on the different aspects of us, the self-hate. And it's easier said than done, but I do see things changing that way with children.
Yeah, and I think it's almost remembering that, like, on our, our higher spiritual councils, we have our ancestors watching us. They're literally cheering you on, and that's why maybe certain things and patterns are repeated in your family, and it's like almost going with that main character energy that I'm here to break those family patterns. Like, I'm here to heal my lineage. And, especially I think about the women that have come before us and the rights that we have now. Like, they would have like absolutely frothed to be living in the time that we have and having the voices that we have and being able to live our best lives and striking that, ultimate balance between our personal lives and our working lives, being a mother and all of these things. So I think that's really powerful to remember that when things happen, maybe it's not just our storyline, but it's like your grandma's storyline or your grandpa's storyline that's also coming through that they never got to enact.
But if you think about it, I mean, think of the strides, just like you said, living now as a woman, the strides we've made in our lifetime, let alone, how long it took us to get here. Things seem to be moving at a more rapid pace. Do you think that's just kind of spiritually the world's trying to speed up and expand our awareness more? Or do you think that's just kind of like technology in modern day?
I think it's like obviously like technology and AI, everything's speeding up, but it's like that energetic level, right? If things are moving quick, like we're also raising that consciousness. So it's kind of like a baptism of fire for humanity, but isn't it kind of beautiful to know like one day maybe like your grandchildren's grandchildren will look back at our generation and be like, wow, those people really went through a lot to kind of carve the path to where we live today and like all of these things that happened and looking back at that. And I'm like, ultimately, when I think about everything, I'm like, it's such a privilege to be alive and to experience this, I think that's what it comes back down to, like the gratitude for the simple things. And, things may not be perfect, but it's also learning things don't have to be perfect to be happy and to be content in life.
I just love you. I think I could talk to you for hours. You are amazing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Courtney. I feel the same way.
Oh my goodness. So how do we find you? Because anyone, I'm going to say it again, listening, go get a reading. This is fascinating. It will tell you so much about yourself. So how can we find you? Follow along with your journey, get a reading, coaching, and get your book, all the good stuff.
Yeah, so my main tool that I use is Instagram. So you can find me at the Phi Dang. So that's the THE, my name, Phi, PHI, and my last name, Dang, DANG. I also have a website, phidang.com. And yes, I do one-to-one coaching as well as readings. And then I do have a book as well called The Great Unlearning, Awakening to Living an Aligned and Authentic Life. You can get that online anywhere on Amazon, or you can go to your local bookstore and order that as well. So yeah, thank you so much for having me on the podcast today, Courtney. It was such a joy and pleasure to speak with you.
It was so much fun. I really enjoyed every minute of it, and I will put all that information in the show notes so that we can find you easily. But thank you again. Thank you for all of your insights. Thank you for all my personal readings. I've been smiling since we started talking, so I really appreciate it and loved everything you do. And that's it for today's Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you, Phi Dang, for such a fun, exciting, and enlightening conversation all about our human design, our purpose, the things that we're here to do in this world. Having your human design blueprint is absolutely fascinating, and she is wonderful. If you want to get yours done, make sure to contact her. I'll put all the information in the show notes below. And as always, you can find Intentional Living with Courtney Meyers and Intentional Media on our website at CourtneyMyers.com. That's where you'll find our books, our courses, and everything else we have coming up. And I'll talk to you soon. Bye.